time for dads now. Look, it's all about dads. I don't want you talking about anything but dads, 'cause it's all dads now. It's inside dad.
Ooh, yeah. Sweet, sweet dad sounds.
What's the you got to do the Tim Allen.
This-
That's the dad. That's the dad sound. Official.
This podcast that you have clicked on or has auto-played for you because you gotta get your
you've
life
died.
together,
You've
or
died.
you died, or you're waiting for your corpse to be found.
Yep.
This podcast is about dad movies. You're inside dads. We love dad movies and dads. We're kind of close to dads. You know, we were just having a conversation where all our friends are actually becoming dads. We are not dads, but we have a podcast about one. And we wanted to talk about, you know how, Dave,
What do I know?
for decades, you know, films have kind of spit back an image to popular culture with a rough definition of what a dad should be.
Yeah.
So, you know, and it's usually like guns and war films and cowboy films. We see all that stuff. And we have movies that are designed for daddy satisfaction, right?
Daddy faction. Yeah.
Daddifaction. And we realized after a conversation, we were in a jazz bar, I believe.
Yeah.
We had just done a bunch of speed, and we didn't know where we were. Turned out it was Amsterdam, and we were like, "Hey, those don't seem to be confined by genre." So Dave and I are in search of what elements of story are and how they seem to transcend genre. What is a dad film?
What is a dad film?
To do that, Dave Bell and I.
That's me.
Are going to get inside this dad. Let's get inside this dad.
Yeah, I mean, what's wild is that we've done a lot of genres, and what's absolutely unreal, correct me if I'm wrong, but we hadn't touched sci-fi yet.
No
Not
space
real.
daddies thus far.
Which is wild because sci-fi is a huge dad genre. Maybe
Oh,
it's
yeah.
so obvious that we didn't think about it. And I want to prelude all of this. Do you want to introduce the movie? Because
I can slam this. Get ready for it. Are you ready
right.
for it?
I already said it.
Okay,
Interstellar.
2014 Interstellar.
Well, all right. So when you said let's do Interstellar,
Mhm.
my first thought was like, I don't know. Yeah, I guess. Like
That feels like an
sort of
everyone movie. That's not a dad movie, right?
In terms of dad movies, I was thinking like Contact. Contact feels like a dad movie, right?
Right.
And I was like, Interstellar is sort of like on the fringes. And then I realized that like,
Nope.
no, what it is that Interstellar and by extension, Christopher Nolan films are kind of the dad films of tomorrow. We're talking about our friends being dads. It's going to be their
Their dad films. Yes.
Yeah, because I don't mean this to be insulting. I really enjoy
It's
Christopher
important.
Nolan's work, but Christopher Nolan's films are always a little stupid in like a Sorkin way. Like they're always like they feel smarter than they are, and they again, no offense to the dad genre or Christopher Nolan, but it's like perfect dad shit where it's like it feels smart, but it's not that smart. And it's kind of idealistic or actually rather cynical more often than not. I realized this film is his most optimistic film.
It's very optimistic.
Yeah.
I mean, love is the fifth dimension.
A dad's love saves the world.
Saves the
Of course
the
it's a dad
human
film.
society, all of human civilization.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume not a lot of people made it, though. You know,
No, a lot of people died horribly.
a lot of people.
They gloss over that. This movie is very American, which is another dad film thing, and also what makes it kind of silly because like they don't really recognize that there are other countries also doing space stuff. But it's the ending seems to imply that America just like pieced out and left the world to die, and not even a lot of America.
Yeah, it was NASA. It wasn't a United Nations deal or anything like that.
Yeah, let's be honest. The richest Americans probably pieced out on the space station.
Who's paying for this enormous centrifugal space station?
Yeah.
You know, what's the economy like? Everything's horrible. There's only corn.
Only corn. The dad is some vegetables.
So there's a corn guy and an oil guy who run the whole thing.
Yep. This movie, that's the other thing. Watching it occurred to me how much this movie has. It's got corn. It's got science. It's got drones, gizmos. It's got ghosts. It's got space. Space is in rockets is just dicks
Black
and balls.
holes.
Yeah, it's just one big ball.
It's got like dream states, a tesseract.
Yeah, it's got all this beautiful dad candy that, like, besides just the plot, like, yeah, it is very dad.
It might be the most designed dad thing that we've talked about. And I want to kind of preface that with, like, I know a lot of people online talk about the dad film, and what they mean is Master and Commander. What they mean is the Patriot or Braveheart or something, or like old cowboy films or war films like Bridge Over River Kwai or something like that. So that is true. But we're trying to find something that is like, but what not just like boom, shoot, war and guns, big tanks. Like you skin that all away. You take that all away. What are the story icons that are like, this is what you should do to be a dad. This is how you should be. This is what it's like in the brain of a dad. This one is like, I think Christopher Nolan knows his daddy audience. He's got it on lock. Like he knows exactly, like they want to see this shit. They want to see this shit. They want that shit.
It's also kind of a deadbeat dad fantasy because it's about a dad heroically abandoning his kids.
It's like Close Encounters. It's what in the other podcast we do where we talk about Spielberg, the man child, the concept of the man child. He's like, I don't want to be a farmer. Anyway, we should start cutting into the specific scenes so that we can pull specifics out of it. Unless you got one other thing you want to dunk on us. I
think I too often say things that are reserved for the smoking room, so that's why I'm actually holding back. I'm showing some restraint because we're gonna try to get inside of this dad and talk about the plot before we really,
so they can follow a little bit better. Yeah. But feel free to drop those gems into my mouth at any time.
I'll drop all sorts of things in your mouth as we go.
Thank you. So, we were kind of talking about, you've probably seen it. It was a huge movie. But if you haven't or you need a refresher, we're going to kind of hit the basic points, which is the world is plagued by like a dying sun. Dust is everywhere. Its blight has affected all of our crops. And our father, Matthew McConaughey, crop man, does his job, duty, service to his species, to farm, because that's what we need as farmers. But really, he's a special cockpit boy who can fly anything and has a large brain.
Yep.
So do his children.
Speaking of cockpit, does his dick work?
His dick does, and his children are just like him, very smart and cool.
And his dick still works because John Lithgow is like,
go.
You better pull your weight, old man. Repopulate the earth. Better pull that dick.
Which, he does that a lot. He comes into my house, this John Lithgow, tells me, get that dick to work. Yeah. And I'm like, get out of here, Lithgow. And I push him outside with a broom.
I'm pretty sure because, all right, so just to give the timeline, John Lithgow, I believe, is playing a millennial to give like some context,
awesome.
Or even maybe even one Gen Z. But like it's about, I would say about 100 years in the future.
Oh, no, it's definitely Gen Z. Because at one point he was like, I fucking hate corn. It's not skibbity.
He says
I believe he said that, right?
Yeah, he said that.
No cap. I'm John Lithgow.
I'm John Lithgow.
So we get he teaches his kid. It's very secular, very scientific, which is very Christopher Nolan, and that's something that isn't always true about. And we're going to talk about this more, but I want to just kind of bookend this by at least starting it in your brain. a lot of dad movies have some form of faith. It's usually in a god or providence or like this will work, this plan will work, right? This is like a movie where all our characters are anti that, but the movie itself actually turns out to be like faith in something that makes no sense scientifically.
Right. This actually reminded me, weirdly enough, of Field of Dreams, because that starts with a cornfield.
That's true.
And there's also a scene in both movies. There's a scene where the dad goes to a school and like kind of tells everybody to fuck off in their ways, their puritanical ways. And this is Matthew McConaughey telling them that because they are saying that the moon landing was actually fake because they're crushing any aspirations to go to space, because this is a society that's basically like, we have to focus on Earth, on trying to fix. There's no dreaming. And it's kind of, it reminded me of the scene with the book banning, where it's like, yeah, where it's like, look at these silly people and their dogma. I'm like folksy farmy Matthew McConaughey. One of the first things he does is change a tire, but he's also like, I guess, quote unquote, liberal, like in a way where he's like
secular, I would say is probably the word,
where he's like, I don't like this world, this is all bullshit, and I'm going to reward my kid.
Oh yeah, he's contrarian as well.
This shit out. Yeah,
and we get a scene that kind of elucidates his correctness about that, which is often what we do in Act 1s of most of our hero stories, but definitely with dad movies, is you get a philosophical, like, you get a scene that says like the philosophy of the main character, that actually is the right philosophy. We have a signpost early up in the film where the school doesn't like that Murph, the daughter, is a scientist in the making. She's very smart and she's talking about space. And they're like, we need farmers. Don't you know that reality? And that's a reality that Coop's very aware of. But Coop gets a scene with a very satisfaction like layup for us, which is that the government is editing history to say we never went to the moon, and he's going to take her out for ice cream as punishment. And
it's a very dad thing where it's like, dads love stories where they dunk on somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
it's a fantasy of like, I went to the PTA meeting and I fucking nailed it. I dunked on those teachers.
Right. That's why we often get dads in a crazy world. It's almost like it makes no sense. It's almost always like Terry Gilliam does it with bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Like Michael Crichton does it with like the government being oppressed, not understanding what scientists are saying.
Right.
It's always something like that.
This is also... Sorry, after he changes a tire on a truck, drives through a cornfield and hacks a drone, and it was like they're just playing all the fucking hits.
Yeah,
just gizmos.
Like he's
corn,
a gamer,
farming,
dude. He's a
trucks.
fucking gamer.
Yeah, tires, like all the dad stuff, like computer dad, like truck dad, it's farmer dad.
Farmer dad, just like what else? What other shit do you got?
How does he reward Murph, by the way? He takes her to a baseball game
and eating ice cream.
Yeah.
How great. He says, and I want to capitalize on this because I think it's an element of dad that we see in a lot of movies, which is honestly out of place in this movie because of the characterization of Coop, of Matthew McConaughey. So in the scene with the school and the teachers, he says, you probably wanted, this is paraphrase, my dead wife to have this conversation. She was always the calmer one.
Yeah.
Which basically is threatening them with a bad time. There's violence kind of insinuated there. I'm not going to be calm.
He's like that for the first until he goes to space. Later,
Then
when he's talking to
out.
Michael Caine, I was like, is he going to hit Michael Caine?
Yeah, and that is...
He gets really
that
close
feels very
to people.
machismo and bravado, which is not what this character is. But there's a long storied past of like the cowboys of like, if you move an inch, I'm gonna take you down. And it's that kind of big dick waving, which is sometimes necessary in, I don't know, wars and stuff. So I see why it's like an ideal in some instances.
Well, because he's science, but we learn he's the best damn pilot they have.
Right.
And so it's like, oh, okay, he's like army science cool, like he's not like a bookworm.
But here in Act 1, where we don't know what's happening yet, as a viewer, we see this guy as kind of like unnecessarily adversarial. Like, because he doesn't have anything, like, yes, don't rewrite that we didn't go to the moon, but do you have to threaten this woman?
Yeah.
Saying, I'm not going to be calm. I'm not going to be calm in a second if you keep doing this. Yeah. That's borderline
Right.
freak
It's like, are you
behavior.
going to bite my fucking ear off? What
Yeah,
is
like,
this?
what are we doing here? We're just talking about kids. So there's a Lithgow conversation that happens about how Coop was basically for a previous era. He needs to ready his children for the next era. This is the bulk of like the first 25, 30 minutes.
It's
And
farm
that's-
daddy versus science daddy at first. The world
Right.
needs farmers, not dreamers.
And this is something I wanted to underline, a specific nuance of that, is that while this is something that every parent has to wrestle with, it's not dad specific, but there is a constant through line in a lot of these films where you get the wisdom of tradition versus the adaptability of modernity. Both things dads are like, it's important to dads. In fact, often the conflict internally for the dad is the marriage of the two, and they're out of alignment at the beginning, and then they find alignment. Or in other films like Taken or something like that, there's no real change.
There's a triad of dad philosophies I saw in this, because there's farm daddy, the practical, we need to look to the dirt. Then we have far off space daddy, Michael Caine, which is like, and then you have Cooper, who's literal daddy. It's like a tesseract of dads, if you will, a dadception. It's like this trifecta of dads that are all kind of combating each other or like interweaving their philosophies. I think Cooper is kind of in the middle, like he's practical, but he thinks like we have to dream in order to save ourselves, you know?
Yes, exactly. And the gamble pays off, as we're going to see, as you would expect, unless it was a very sad film. At the baseball game, we see how bad the world has gotten. There's dust storms that just destroy everything, and we kind of have to just rebuild everything every time it happens. So it's clearly not tenable. Earth is clearly dying. When they get home, the dust kind of reveals that something is happening in Murph's bedroom/bookcase. An unknown force seems to be affecting gravity, localized around some specific books. And it basically generates an image on the ground. And I do love this imagery. This is stuff that Nolan is very good at.
He loves this shit, yeah.
Generating an image on the ground that resembles a spectrogram. Also, it's Morse code. Turns out that it's Murph and Coop just become so obsessed with this, what they call their ghost, they find out it's binary coordinates. To NASA, turns out. And they go and Murph stows away, and Coop lets her. He's just, kiddo, you can get in the car.
That's
even
such
though
a
I told
dad
you
thing.
not.
Stow away, kid.
Yeah. And
I'm
they
also
go to,
wondering, do you think car trips are a dad film thing? If we go back and look at the ones, I don't know. I feel like there's going to be more car trips in our future.
I do think it is. Well, it's a scene that dads feel at home, because it's a scene that dads, for the most part, are often playing that role of. So it's like, imagine a family in the car. 9 times out of 10, just because of how like population dynamics work, someone is imagining a dad in the front seat, right?
Right.
Driving the car. That's just how most brains kind of compute that problem. Not saying that that's real. That's just the gamble that Hollywood's making. Yeah. And I think that there's something to be said about like movies that are for dads, or at least designed to capture dad's attention, would have scenes like that where it's like, well, of course you're driving away and you get to, it's your domain, and yes, she's stowing away here, but you christen it. It's fine because you're like, you love science, and you're just like me, and that's fine. Yeah. And they get to NASA, and they don't know it's NASA. It's a reveal. It's a reveal, but yeah. And we meet Anne Hathaway, who's Dr. Brand, and another Dr. Brand, her father, and it's Michael Caine. It's not your grandfather's NASA. It's cool NASA. It is cool. I want to point that out. NASA. Yeah. It's badass NASA, where it's like, ooh, they might kill him. And it's NASA. Secret NASA. And this is to me a perfect metaphor for Christopher Nolan. They're in a conference room. Mm-hmm. And they're talking, and this is where he's like, I need assurances you're going to get us out of here, and stuff like that. Yeah, and they're like, don't you know who we are? We're NASA. And he hits a button, and the conference room opens up to reveal a giant a space rocket, which means that they built a conference room that opens up into a rocket ship. Why would they have that? If they find the super pilot that they somehow lost. The only use is to do that. And that's such a perfect Nolan thing, where it feels like this big dramatic moment that you don't think about. And then later you go like, wait,
Was that dumb? I think that was
That
dumb.
was dumb. That's when I love Christopher Nolan films a lot. Like I think that they're
Me
well
too.
designed machines.
This is coming from a place of love. My
It's
criticism.
from love, but like this is exactly that. When we say it's the stupid stuff, a lot of the fanboys on the internet come out and they're like, none of the science. I mean, it's like science fiction, but like most of science is actually very good. I have no problem with the science. It's stuff like this where it's like he is, according to Michael Caine, Coop is the best pilot NASA ever had.
Yeah.
And they need a pilot. Why didn't they go and find him? It's not like he's not on the books. He's got a kid in school.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did they were like, it's Providence that you came here. We're so lucky. It's like, you're fucking NASA, dude. And it's just
he was
Christopher
hours
Nolan
away.
hours away. And Christopher Nolan just blazes through that because he understands that we aren't in the moment initially. We're not going to really care about that. I actually don't. Like, I think that can be overused. I think that there's a lot of film movements right now, like the Safdie brothers and stuff like that, that are in very much the cinema of the present. And I do believe that there's something to be said about like this can get out of hand, and then it's like the plot's holes are problematic. But I think it's like it's entertaining though. Like I'll give them a pass. Yeah.
So I compare Nolan to like Michael Crichton, and that they're both very good at taking things that are nonsense and making them sound very smart.
Right.
In terms of the science and plot. And I think maybe we're too online, but what happened when his movies first came out was that a lot of people thought these are really smart and got like really defensive about it. And it's like, no, not only they don't have to be smart. That's the thing. They just have to be fun. And that's what I like about his movies is that they're just smart enough to be fun, but they're not
always movement. It's always like, we're going somewhere, baby. The music rules. Look at that.
If they were truly smart, they'd be boring.
Yeah, they would, because it would be like, I don't know.
It would be, come with me. I can't do this grand reveal. We're going to walk down the hallway and I'm going to show you. Here's the rocket site. It's of course not next to our conference room. That would be dumb. Why would we have that?
Another movie that feels like it's a dad movie, but I wouldn't say it hits our criterion, enough to cover it. But like another Matt Damon space movie that came out around now is The Martian. And that is all about like the deeper science. I love that movie. That's a great movie.
I think that's a dad movie.
Yeah, I mean, we could maybe talk about it, but
I need to rewatch it. But
it doesn't check enough boxes for me so far. But maybe you can show me the path.
I mean, if we're picking and choosing, I would pick this.
I don't want
to
talk about The Martian. I'm just talking about how there are films that are more scientifically like sound or like are attempting to dive into that stuff, and they're good films. They're entertaining. That film was done very well, but like that's different from this is a roller coaster ride. You know, like it's a different experience. That's all I meant to say. Yeah. So it turns out this is something called the Lazarus Project, humanity's final hope to use a wormhole to find other habitable worlds that we can leave Earth from.
We meet robots here that are revealed to do dad jokes.
Tarzan Case, and they're dad jokes. You're right.
Yeah, they do dad jokes. The robots just spit out dad jokes.
Yeah, it's just like puns left and right. Oh my God, fuck, these robots are designed for dad. We sent some scientists basically to scout the planets, and due to the like insane forces of the wormhole, we need to send more to retrieve the data. We can't get really a good lock on it.
They have a plan A and plan B. Dads love plans.
We love plans, and we learn in that scene that corn is the final crop that will exist, and it's going to die soon in generations. And like basically humanity is done within like 3 generations, according to Michael Caine. And they need that hotshot pilot to fly the spaceship, baby, and all the other pilots are dog shit, apparently. So before he leaves on his journey, though, they explain their building is like a centrifugal space station. Oh, you kind of covered this. You talk about how there's like plan A and plan B. One is saving everyone on Earth. B is just a population bomb, which has always been like a plan for humanity since
to jizz on a planet like a good dad would.
Yeah, like a good dad will. So Caine is the one thing that is left on Earth that we need before we go to space in this movie. Is the fact that Caine is like, by the way, going out there, but like I haven't solved the gravity problem, but I'm working on it, and I'm like a year away from it. and then I'll solve the gravity problem, which will allow us to use plan A and get all the people off of Earth in this huge spaceship, and we'll go through the wormhole. But we just need to get it to fly into the atmosphere, out of the atmosphere, which is a gravity problem. And so he says, and he's like, well, you're a good guy, so I'm going to base everything in my life based off you being honest right now. Right. And that's what happens. So after some back and forth with Lithgow, we get one more scene who, again, represents the old millennial card dad, in the sense that he's like, dad's sole purpose is to provide for his children, not to follow his dreams or this weird science boner you have. But Coop is driven. Basically, his real job is flying spaceships. That's how he
and
feels.
He's saving his kids by abandoning them.
Yes.
By missing out on his teenage or his little girl's teenage years, which would be horrible, insufferable years. Like this is, it's just very funny because it's basically him getting to piece out of like the tough stuff.
The stuff he doesn't want to do
to save the world, and it's like, you can't complain, right? Daddy has to save the fucking world.
But I think it's smart because it isn't like, it is that everything you just said is true, but I think Nolan does something smart where he puts that up against the big conflict, is that because it's the biggest pain of like a father can go through, is that like there's that scene with Murph who's like, don't go, and he's like, I'm in my mind, I am saving you. And she's like, the ghost literally wrote stay in gravity. And he's like, space is dope.
Yeah, I'm being glib about this because like the reality is that this is the crux of the drama, which is that this man doesn't want to leave his kids. He just has to. It's just very funny watching it from like that
the standpoint of he
observation of being like,
space.
It's very funny that he has to heroically become a deadbeat dad. And it's like
Anne Hathaway and he's like, oh, word?
Yeah, he's got to go heroically fuck Anne Hathaway in space and leave his kids and his job. It's just very funny.
But the reality that, no one wants us to see, and it's, pretty much proven by the movie, he's a good daddy and a sad daddy. So he goes to space. Great sequence. I love how they shoot the car lifting away from the family. Like the way he puts the cameras on it, or just like
shout out to can I have your truck when you're gone? Very dad goodbye. It's a very dad like, goodbye.
You mean your truck?
Yep. Slapping backs, being like, take care of my kids to John Lithgow. He never really says goodbye to John Lithgow. It's just like, see you around,
he tosses him just a bundle of condoms that he has in his jean pockets. And Hans Zimmer is there. Woo, baby.
Boy, is he.
Vapors.
He might as well be in the back seat of McConaughey's car.
Yeah. And we also get another scene that we see a lot in dad films, especially with teamwork or groups, is we get, once we're aboard in space, we get the sassy robots. We meet the crew. It's a team like meet cute in like adventure movies. They're all badasses and philosophers and like, and it's just placates my sensitive brainy dad brain.
Just pointing out another, I don't know, I guess this isn't like huge, but like, I don't know why they couldn't go with him to the launch, his family. I don't know why I had to say goodbye there.
It's a secret. No one can know that NASA happened.
Yeah, I guess they already know.
Because they will be pissed. I mean, they probably would be.
It's
honestly,
there
would be like
way.
Jesse Plemons from Civil War would be like, they're done putting people into space.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't need to go to the moon. I want Coca-Cola. I guess they would have Coca-Cola because they would have corn syrup.
Know. Oh yeah, you're right.
There's a lot of there's a lot of docking with stuff in this movie. Tubes going into ports.
Again, it's balls and tubes in space. They explain how a black hole works by doing dick stuff too. They penetrate.
I love when they do that. I love when they stick the pencil into the paper.
It would have been
every time.
So funny if he was like, "Have you seen Event Horizon?" They're like, "Yeah," and he's like, "That's like that."
Every time they do it in a movie, I go like, "Oh yeah."
I wrote that they should explain how a black hole works in every dad film. It should have been in The Judge. Like there should have just been like,
it doesn't matter. Here's how wormholes work.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it makes sense.
No, it just needs to show that image. Here's my other thing that this movie has, which is, and I pointed this out with The Martian and a few other sci-fi films because we cover a lot of sci-fi. there's only two diagrams that you do when you're in a space movie. One is the pencil through the paper. The other is a whiteboard with a slingshot maneuver,
Yes!
baby. And they also do that one.
Yes,
later.
they do.
It's perfect. But Coop, another important fact that, Coop starts to kind of suspect that there's too much faith in Edmund's, one of the dudes who went first, planet. And the people want it to be perfect, specifically Anne Hathaway, Brand. Also, we see them making video diaries for their families, which are then delivered by Michael Caine on Earth. When we see Coop making friends and being kind to his crewmates, this is like classic captain or coach stuff. He's like helping them. In like one of them, Rom, the guy whose character Rom is like, I can't sleep. This bothers me. He's like, just listen to the trees, baby. And he puts on like a tape with nature sounds. And they get to the wormhole is the basic point. And we get some explaino-science about wormholes that you mentioned. And at one point while they're going through the wormhole, a ghost seems to appear and touch Brand, and everyone's like, what? And then we forget about that until the end of the movie.
Yep.
And then they get into the new galaxy and stoically discuss their next step, which is what I love. I love movies where scientists are like our main characters, or at least very practical people, where it's like, these are our resources. This is the thing. Like, this is the problem. Work the problem.
And they proceed to fuck up.
Yes,
constantly. They
Which
do
is
everything
true.
wrong. They start with the worst planet, and they keep going. Miller
They keep going.
fucks them. Miller's planet, because what they get is they say there's promising
Yes.
data from Miller's planet, and so they decide to go there first. And Lord, I don't know what kind of fucking data they got, but that was was a goddamn lie.
Well, I think they have one
They say
line
it
that right
later.
away. It's like it's cascading.
They say the data we received, I wrote it down, what the data we received was just the initial status echoing. But I was like, how do you fuck that up? Wouldn't you wait until you get a message from Miller saying, okay, so here's the planet, here's what's up.
Now you're there. You're in atmosphere. Can't you just say like,
can't you just message them
was there no
and go,
plan?
hey, are you down there? What's up?
Yeah, was there no plan to have long distance radio contact? I mean, like you can fire sound and binary through a wormhole. You can
Considering
at least do that
stakes.
here.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's got huge waves the size of mountains, and it killed Miller like minutes ago. But because of time dilation,
Awesome.
it's
Awesome
on.
idea.
They're there at a few hours. Great fucking planet in terms of sci-fi.
Yeah.
So every few hours, it's like 10, or like an hour is like 10 years or some shit.
Murders American Beauty because he waits weirdly too long to get in the fucking shit.
Well, I think
like, what you looking
there's an
at, buddy?
implication that he's in love with Brand, so we got like a little triangle.
Right.
little
I just thought maybe he
sexy
saw a
triangle.
plastic bag floating in the wind.
Yeah, he's like, I gotta
beautiful.
go. I'm so beautiful. It pulls out a camera. That would be
Hits by
so
the tidal
fucking
wave.
sick, dude.
Yeah.
They basically. Oh, by the way, Rom stayed behind and he waited years.
That is the cool. I want a movie just about that.
Like his 25 years or whatever, where he's just like chilling.
Yeah, he should be way crazier when they get back.
Well, he said that he slept for stints. Like, so
Right.
he's not, he didn't, like, my guess is that he spent like 10, 15 years, like,
But he should-
which would make you pretty crazy.
It would be amazing if they get on and there's just like he's made a family like out of objects. And they're like, what is that? He's like, never mind that. That's nothing. That's crap.
It's not-
They clearly have like holes that he fucked. Yeah.
What if they come
Just
back
a
and he's
Wilson
just got like,
with a tick
somehow
hole.
he's just got a bunch of people and they're having a party. He's like, whoa,
Aliens.
sorry.
He's just like, what's
yeah,
up?
they're like, oh shit. That would be sick. That's a movie I want to make.
Yeah.
Anyway.
They lose decades. Again,
They lose decades.
really cool idea because this leads to the scene where
This
he's
is-
watching the videos and it's
That's
like,
the thing. This whole
fuck.
sequence is the best part of the movie, right?
It feels like the movie was built around
back
it.
to back, it's like that was a cool sequence. They have to fly out and they do cool maneuvers because he's a great spaceman pilot. And then they get back and we have that scene where the kid turns into Casey Affleck. And
Horrifying thing for
crying.
to happen to a father. That's why he's crying, right? He's like, he became
No, it's
Timothée
Casey
Chalamet
Affleck.
became Casey Affleck.
I had a Chalamet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that sucks. Everyone's back home is old now. It was the
Oh.
beach that makes everyone else old.
It is. I do have to note the Miller's Planet scene. There's a very important thing. He has to feel the air when he does the landing. He runs on instinct and guile.
That's right.
They're like, we don't. He's like, I'm a robot. I'm going to use my data, and he's like, fuck your data. I'm
your
gonna,
data.
I'm gonna feel it out.
I'm gonna fire
the
this
best
right
fucking
into the
pilot
Death Star
there is.
without the computer. I'm gonna use the Force, and
Yeah.
he does, and it rules. And then there's a thing. So after all that happens, we get the ultimate dad line in the movie, in my opinion, which is when you become a parent, one thing becomes very clear: you want your kids to feel safe.
Yeah.
So he's like, that's just dad textbook. And I also love that because there's a scene while they're waiting to get off the planet where they're like, our engines have to like dry out. So we have to sit here for 45 minutes. And like, that's also bittersweet because it's like, they didn't even get to do anything.
Right. It's so.
If I was like, I got 45 minutes, I'd be like, well, let's like go outside and like, I don't know, grab some readings or something.
I don't know. I honestly wish they used the torment a lot more there because it's like that idea of like they're sitting there knowing that decades are passing,
but
and
not
that's gonna
knowing.
and I would be like, I'd be trying to do everything I fucking could to speed it up.
There's also a thing that made me laugh is that at one point, Coop's first question after they're like, oh, we have 45 minutes. We just have to sit here while the engines do the thing. Coop's first question to Brand, who's the more brainy one, she's the scientist, is like, oh, no. Can we make it go back? Is there science for take backsies? And she's like, no, dumbass. We fucked up. Like it's just funny that
can we make time go reverse?
Can we drive backward into a wormhole and that reverses time? She's like, no, you fucking idiot. Why is this guy here? But yeah, anyway, it's just real sad dad stuff. When he returns, Coop watches his children again get colder and give up on him, and the world is clearly worse because no one's happy. And Murph comes on at the very end, and she's like, fuck you, Dad, you suck, and I've never talked to you, and I just, in case that you are listening, you suck. Yep. And so we get a real Dark Night of the Dad. So yeah, back on Endurance, they have a vote on which planet to go next. Again, Brand is very clearly in love with Edmonds.
Dad to vote.
Which his name is Wolf Edmonds. That's pretty sweet.
Yeah, it is a great name.
Everyone name your kid Wolf.
Yeah, don't name them Man, Dr. Man.
Yeah.
If you name your kid Dr. Man, that's way too on the nose.
Dr. Man. Well, that's his last name. It's not like
it's still his fault. I blame
It's
him.
not his name is Man.
You don't know that?
But one thing that's weird is that after Brand was like, don't you roll your eyes at me for or Coop was like, don't you roll your eyes at me for asking about the reverse timey question. She's like, maybe love is something quantifiable. And the other two are like, nah, it's Matt Damon time. So they go to the Matt Damon planet. Meanwhile, at Earth, Murph takes over the project after years of helping Michael Caine, because it's been 25 years, 23 years at this point. And she started to suspect that the gravity problem is unsolvable or something is being hidden from her because she's also very smart. And Casey Affleck's having a bad time. He's got a kid with corn lung and there's just very little hope. And she tries to get them to see doctors and they just hate that apparently now. Like apparently we turned into Luddites in a generation. Like humanity doesn't seem to like science within generations, which I guess could happen. I don't know. Caine dies. And he's like,
he's a lie daddy.
Go once more into the night, Batman. And basically kicks the bucket. And then she's
but he's a lie daddy. He reveals it's all been a lie.
That plan A, basically bringing everyone off of Earth, was never going to happen. He couldn't solve it. He solved it before, and it's impossible. And that is revealed to Murph at this point, and will be soon to Coop and the others.
She sends the message.
She's going to send the message. So
we get a good robot fake out here because I think watching the movie the first time, you're just waiting for the robots to kill everybody. And there's the robot is watching her message. Mm-hmm. And you think like, oh, is it going to lie to them? Because it talks about being dishonest.
I thought that would have been cool. That's like
it's
real...
a fake out.
Right.
Because you assume that's what's going to happen.
Like, if the setting was... If they like said it a lot... I don't know. I would have that shit to 100 all the time though, because I'd be like,
I'm not having this robot lie to me. Yeah.
I then zero chance for lies. Like I can't have that on my brain as well.
Yeah.
Because then it's some ex machina shit. In any case, I also like that we get that scene where Murph sends a message to Coop like, "You motherfucker, you ran," because that's the worst indignity a father can experience. Their children thinking that they aren't a hero or that they aren't good, right? Like that's worse than death to a lot of dads. And they scoop up Matt Damon, who's fixing his numbers because he wanted to be the hero. And this escalates into Damon taking one of the ships to dock with the station, and he fucks it all up. He's a coward and is selfish and not what a dad stands for. A dad must see the bigger picture and help everybody. This is all intercut. This is a lot. This whole section goes very quickly into Act 3. Back at home, Murph believes that the ghost might have some insight on the gravity equation, which is why she goes home.
Yeah,
I guess it's also bundled with, like, I got to see Casey Affleck. And
the editing on this sequence, every time I watch it, I go, are they going to even match up? Are they going to make it? Because it's like this juggling act where so much happens in Matthew McConaughey's side, where all Murph does is go to a house and get in a room.
Yeah, exactly.
It's wild.
It's wild, but that's how it works, is because you put the Hans Zimmer music on and you cut in the way that he cuts, and it's like, oh, we got momentum. It's all happening, baby. So yeah, while Dr. Mann is doing his coward thing, Murph burns Casey Affleck's farm to try to get them to leave their home because his whole family is corn lug.
I know we're wrapping it up, but I do have to say Matt Damon is so good at playing pathetic pieces of shit.
Oh my God.
The Departed, Drive Away Dolls. Like, he's so good at playing weird little pathetic pieces of shit. And I think we love it because I think he's such a pretty boy, especially for a dad film. It's fun to watch him play like a sniveling little piece of shit. And you're like, yeah, that's right. Pretty boy.
I mean, it started with Will Hunting, dude. That's a great scene where he's just like, Robin Williams is like, it's going to be okay.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault. That's right.
Yeah.
And Matt Damon's like, and it's wonderful to see like a very handsome boy.
But it
fall
can't.
Apart.
He is so good in this. I think Christopher Nolan is always hit or miss with characters. He's so good with like cynicism, and Matt Damon, his whole attitude of that, he keeps lying to himself to insist that he's doing this to save humanity, and all he's doing is running away and killing them.
Yeah.
And it's so good to watch him do this. Like, he's like lying to himself of like, I'm going to do this for all of us. And he uses the power of speech, a very dad thing, but he's subverting it. He is also a coward. He has no honor the entire time. And it's just, he's lying to save his ass. And I just need to point that out for later.
Yeah, it's also kind of a cool commentary on like the folly of dad, because it's like, it's not like he's just this random guy who sucks. He also has the same thing that these scientists have. He just drank the Kool-Aid too much. Like, he's so confident that he is the hero.
Right. He's like, I'm the hero, so that what I'm
like,
doing must be heroic.
It never crossed my mind that my planet wouldn't be viable and I would just die here. Like that. He was like, that just never crossed my mind. And it's because we watch things like Interstellar. It's like if you had like your object permanence was totally fucked and you were just like, what I see in movies means that's what's going to happen to me in real life. Interstellar would lead me to do shit like Matt Damon does, right?
Yeah.
Because you would believe that you're the hero of the story. Your weird instincts are always going to be right. It's impossible. It's necessary. That is a slam dunk in the movie. That's all man is doing.
Yeah, one of the themes of the movie that I only picked up on this time, because it's about the idea of an imperfect species having to do this very difficult task, right? And you could argue whether or not it succeeds in that story. But one thing throughout is lying. The whole society, everything's based off lies. They're lying about NASA at the beginning. Yes. They're lying to kids. It's all about the idea of necessary lies and what is and isn't. Everybody is lying to everybody to get certain things done. And Dr. Mann is the person who's lying to himself and lying to others just for saving himself. Where
Right.
in a moment, Matthew McConaughey is about to lie for the opposite reason.
Exactly. Which is kind of interesting, to be honest with you. Like, that's a shade more than most virtue-based or moral plays, that we see that a lot of these dad movies are. Like, it's a lot more like, that can't be right. But it's a very dark view of humanity, right?
Well, it is and it isn't, because it's about the idea of this necessity of lying and the use of lying, which I think if we went back and watched some of those other films, might be a secret thread that we missed. But I'm not certain.
The power of lies.
The power of lies.
Power of lies. So
a dad has to lie sometimes.
Sometimes he's got to lie to, fucking make it true.
And go into the power of speech. Matt Damon is about to give a speech and he dies.
There is a moment that subversion is fantastic. Everyone who's seen it knows it. I'm not going to talk about it because we get the famous docking scene immediately after that, which how many? I've probably jerked off to that maybe 20 times. How about
20?
You?
Easy.
Yeah. It's one of the coolest sequences.
He uses
the last
his guile.
2 decades.
Again, none of that computer shit.
Well, it's also just the fucking Hans over there going like.
Right. I have to note something.
Like, oh baby.
There's something so funny about the power of guile, because it is like none of that computer stuff. But one of the people piloting is a computer. And it's very funny because as long as you have arms, it counts. Where they're like, oh, don't plug into it. Like, why doesn't the robot just like plug into the ship?
Jack. Yeah.
But it's like, no, it's like using its little fucking robot arms.
It's because we lost the technology for smart houses and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and all that stuff. It's gone. It's only corn. It's all corn. They had to rebuild computers from corn. So, after Man basically he fucks up. He doesn't have lock on the airlock, so he opens the door, gets blasted, and of course that destroys like, a quarter of the Endurance, which is the massive space shuttle that they've been docking into, and now they're low on fuel. Half of they're limping along and they're sliding towards the black hole. So the plan is we just got to kind of abandon this, and we got to take our little like scout ships. And Brand, you're gonna go to Edmund's world. I'll follow you, and I'll take the scout ships and we'll release.
No, I thought they released the scout ships for extra weight. The Endurance, I thought they're slingshotting. They play it real fast and loose with some NASA level math.
Yeah,
it's very funny to watch them be like quickly like, all right, let's just fucking slingshot. They're slingshotting the Endurance,
by the way, which is like probably the hardest.
But whatever,
it's fine.
It's fine. They slingshot the Endurance around the black hole, and then they drop the two ships for extra weight. And the idea is Hem and Brant are going to be in the main ship.
But turns out,
so she thinks,
the power of lies. Turns out one of them is going to sacrifice themselves and go into the black hole to get. Yeah. So dads take the situation in their own hands. He's just going to sacrifice himself for added weight, which I don't know if that was entirely necessary. Why aren't they all both in the same ship?
So she also said, you dick, you said there was enough resources. And I think the idea is like they also don't have enough oxygen or food.
Yeah,
like,
that's probably
I think the idea is like in any other movie, this is a side character, which I really like, that it's like, no, he's doing the sacrifice. But of course he's going somewhere cooler into a black hole.
Into a black hole and not going to die.
Which is very funny because I'm pretty sure it would just crush him.
According to physics,
whatever.
Well, you get spaghettified. Your atoms split from atoms before anything else, and it happens very fast.
Yeah, I love the premise of like, we don't know what's in a black hole. If we went in a black hole, and I'm like, I think we'll die. I'm pretty sure we'll just die.
Well, that's the thing. Wormholes versus black holes.
Yeah.
Maybe they're different things, and maybe one of them doesn't kill you.
Maybe.
I don't know. We don't know anything about either of them, really. So he enters the black hole. And Cooper arrives in the tesseract, and this is all very visually striking. And
done practically.
Our boy
a lot of it,
Hoyt Van Hoytema, who did the new Dunes, very good, very, very, very good DP. Yeah. Point is, Cooper arrives in the tesseract, where you can go through time like a physical dimension, and he tells Murph via gravity that he's still alive, and this basically gives her, and he programs a watch somehow in Morse.
Yeah, okay. I need to stop here because this is very Nolan. First, we get the reveal he was the ghost the whole time, which is great. Yeah. But he says, "Oh, gravity, they can communicate. We're the ghosts. We're the beings. We saved ourselves." And he says, "Oh, you can use gravity." And so he makes the watch say Morse code, not through gravity, through force. He's using force. Matthew McConaughey. That is not how gravity works.
Gravity he's manipulating, right?
He's making the clock tick in Morse code. I don't know how that equates to gravity. He waves his little fingies above the clock, and it ticks.
That's the dimensional aspect of it. If you see time and gravity as a part of this fourth dimension, and you're a fifth dimensional being,
it just
you can adjust it like you can move a can on your desk or something like that.
Everything else is gravity, and that things falling he stops or causes. Making a watch hand move.
The thing that really gets me is not that he makes the watch hand move, because that all makes sense to me. It's the programming it, where he's like, I'm gonna make this and he's just goes like, Tars, just put the just make it so that it's constantly doing this.
Yes.
And Tars or Case or whatever, he's like, I don't know how. What do you mean?
This is a colossal. This is a really big ask, because it also is. He is putting the mathematical equations of the answer to what's in a black hole in Morse code in a watch. And I'm like, that would take years, right?
Yeah, that's gotta at least take a week.
Yeah,
for a complex equation.
No,
unless
it's just
E
a couple of dots and dats. It's just beep, 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 beep,
turns
beep,
out it was just A equals B squared or something.
That's
also just because he's in the tesseract, does he know what the equation is?
He has the robot. He says, "Did you get any readings?"
Just the data.
And the robot, he's like, "Pass on to Morse." He keeps saying translate to the Morse code, put it in my helmet, and it's just really funny, because at first it's just what's the word stay, and it takes him 30 seconds to do that, and then he's like, just all answers to the universe, can you just put that in Morse code real quick, and he just hammers that out, and it's very silly.
Why doesn't he just gravity a hole in the floor that just says hi Murph?
He should.
If you can move stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's fine. It's all
again. It's fine because it's fun. It's
fun.
And it's a neat idea. Doesn't matter that it's because it's also proving that love is a fifth dimension, because he is driven by love to be in that moment.
Yeah.
So his connection to his daughter is this is also a really cool plot twist that is very dad to me. He's learning that it's not about him. He's not the important person. It's actually his daughter. And I know you can ask well, then why isn't she the main thing. Why isn't she the main character? And it's yeah, that's a good point. But that's the moral here, is that he was never really important. It's his daughter who's gonna figure it all out. And it's very dad revelation.
Yeah, it's because he's the frontier. He's the frontiersman. She's the one who
he's
settles.
The gopher. He's the one who has to go do the work.
We like stories about people who make it on the Oregon Trail, not the people who came second, right?
Yeah.
Now she is more important in terms of the canon of humanity, because this solving this gravity equation allowed her within 50 years to build a station that I assume has at least 100,000 people on it.
Yeah, they really
kind of yada that.
Because I'm how did that thing happen?
Let's assume
period.
Half the population is dead from the start of the film, right? Because of light. Let's say 2 billion people. Then let's say a quarter of what we have now.
I think it's the equivalent of Cincinnati made it. I do not think...
Oh, really? Oh, okay.
Well, look at that. All right, it's all rich people, because the first thing you see when he gets there is a cornfield and kids playing baseball, and I'm like, you have so much space. That could have been an apartment block. This should not be. They're just we're just stretching our legs. It's
yeah, but over the
that
planet,
could have been hundreds, thousands of people.
Yeah, maybe he's explained this, and maybe the Nolan brothers who wrote this are oh yeah, in our world, only a few towns in America survived, and that's just how the climate change worked, you know? Maybe that's the thing with science fiction, you can kind of explain it away with that. But
you could say like maybe because they fucked off, they left more resources.
Right.
But again, it feels like it's like maybe a couple thousand really rich people who each have like 10 acres of land to their name. They give Coop a farm museum, and it's just like
they have farms to give.
Yeah.
That's the other thing, is that in space it's all...
Where's the hydroponics? You know, where it's like what are we
could
doing? This is ridiculous.
We could use more food. We could use that space for solar power and build another greenhouse.
He has like a 5-bedroom house, and he is one guy and a robot. And it's like, come the fuck on. What is this?
It's fucking great. So I don't know how many people, maybe there's definitely not a billion people on the Halo ring is the point.
I think it's a little implied because his daughter has to come there from another place. It might be implied that they built a bunch of these. Yeah, which is either way. There's something crazy that they yada yada over here, and it's either a genocide or it's impossible.
Well, it's good to make multiples. Triples are best. So we've kind of flashed forward to the 50 years later, and Coop is there. Like you said, he's not really feeling the vibe. And
he has his son robot. He calls the robot Slick while drinking beers on the porch.
Oh, that's basically Champ or Sport. Another thing that he hears as soon as he arrives and gets out of like the hospital bed, and he's asking questions about Cooper Station, and they're like, and he's like, "You named a station after me, pretty cool." And like the guy's like, "Oh no, we named it after your daughter." And this is dad fantasy. It's hearing from someone. Well, this is Murphy Cooper we're talking about. And the idea that your spawn is even better than you means you're the best
strong
dad.
sperm.
You made it better. And that's
best
like
sperm.
and that's what parents want, right? They were like, well, I'm a piece of shit a little bit. What if I made a copy of me that was less of a piece of shit?
Yep.
That's a fantasy.
And
turns out all your kids are pieces of shit, just like you were.
He gets to see his elderly daughter, she says, "Nobody believed me, but I knew you'd come back." So he's underestimated.
Yeah,
it's got that they all underestimated. No one thought I'd come back, and then his grandma daughter is like, "Well, 5 minutes was enough to catch up. You go fuck Anne Hathaway.
You go fuck Anne Hathaway," and he's like, "All right, steal a spaceship
later." He barely like they don't even have like they could have like tea together or something.
I mean, she's
he
not
visits
wrong.
her and she's like,
just very cold. It's just very, very cold. But she's not wrong because she's like, you're a fucking ghost to me. Like,
all you needed was a montage.
These people.
All you needed was a montage of them all hanging out, him like laughing with her grandkids, meeting everybody. You know, like they spend a day, and her going like, "You need to go. I'm dying." You know, like all you needed was that, and maybe him like crying a little more, like I can't leave you, Murph. But no, she's like,
do anything to not have a family.
I know, because she's like, you go, fuck Anne Hathaway. And he's like, okay, bye.
What if it cuts to, because then we cut to like, as this, it's all intercut, but the last like images are Brand, who's on Edmund's planet. Turns out that's a great planet. It looks
and he's
fantastic.
Dead, right? She's burying his ass.
She's burying his dead ass, and she's seeding
is open for business, is what we know.
And she's seeding a new human civilization in vitro.
She's about to get seeded.
He arrives
herself.
Right, and the first like
they don't show him arrive.
The first right, but I'm saying that this is how it should end. Is that he arrives on Edmund's planet, and she's like, you know, she's been growing these little fucking tadpoles in the vials, and they're turning into kids, and he sees kids, and he's like, I gotta go.
I gotta go save them. It's for them. I gotta save them.
There's somebody who needs me, I think. The tesseract. I met somebody in the tesseract.
She's like, that was me. You met me through the wormhole.
Oh,
no, it was someone else. It was someone else.
Anyway, that's Interstellar.
Oh fuck.
So let's do the thing where we do, which is we've been talking a lot about, like we dropped all the hints so you know all the references, but let's like kind of scope like a tesseract around the whole podcast run that we've been doing and talk about like basically what we've learned about dad tropes with all the films that we've seen so far and what this one adds to it, how it's different and how it's the same. And in order to do that, we go to the smoking room. So here we are with our smoking jackets and we're pipes.
So I have some bad news.
Fancy. Yeah.
this is a non-linear story.
I know. I noticed that.
Yeah.
It's literally fucking with time.
Yep.
I don't know if that crosses off the list, but I am marking.
I don't think it crosses
that's
off
not
the
a
list.
necessary function. It's not necessary.
I want to. So yeah, the things I hit on that we've already done. Well, I already said this is layers of dads. It's dad versus dad. The dad. There's three dads.
Mhm.
So we have women in peril.
Oh,
his wife is
specifically
dead
his
before
daughter, who's like a metaphor for all of
Women-
humanity.
Women are so in peril that his daughter manages to die of old age before him. He outlives his daughter.
Yeah.
That's how much women are in peril. But also his wife is dead before the film starts.
Before it starts, which frees you up for a lot of stuff. If dead wife.
This is an aside, but the power of not cleaning is in this. Dust is good. Dust saves the world here. Because they have to read the dust. It's got gizmos.
Mhm.
It's got drones, robots, all sorts of dildos.
Big machines. He fixes trucks, and he also fixes things with spit and glue. He's like hacking
even
stuff.
the robots. Yeah.
And yeah. Which is a robot friend is a little boy's dream. But like the biggest, most important apparatus in human history, that kind of marks as a big machine. Like the spaceship that will save humanity. Like he's driving it. You don't get much bigger than that.
Yep.
Machine wise.
There is.
Yeah.
Oh, you go.
I want to lob a few that I thought were interesting, which is the point of the movie seems to be that there aren't aliens. They talk about they mostly through the movie until the shoe drops, and we realize we helped ourselves.
Self-reliance, Abe. Or as we've talked about, people being underestimated. In this case, humanity.
Yeah.
Humanity is underestimated, whereas the reveal is that we
which is that
did
everyman,
it ourselves.
Which goes right hand in hand with the everyman character. Obviously farmer, but of
Guile.
course he's exceptional. Yeah. I mean, we're just
sacrifice and work ethic, the honor. Matt Damon is bad dad. You have to have a code. It's that. Matt Damon doesn't have a code. Cooper has a code, and it gets him all the way to fuck Anne Hathaway. Because even when he leaves, it's about having a code. It's all about saving the world.
Saving the world, doing the right thing. So here's something we didn't talk about as much because it's not as much in the movie, but something that's key to dad movies, and I think is very much actually in between the lines of this movie, is the display of hierarchy and bureaucracy. As we know from most dad movies, there is a disdain for it. There's a reverence for a true justice system, but often the system in the world is not just. So that's why our, kind of dad has to go do the quote right thing.
Yeah.
In this movie, they don't really show them that incompetent. In fact, NASA's very good.
Oh, no, the school.
But we have the school scene.
Yeah.
And this movie basically says, so there's two things going on is what I'm saying.
Oh, no.
There's the school, which is the incompetence part, which is the rest of society. But then there's NASA, which is
but in
good
this
thing.
NASA
and
are
also,
renegades.
They're the renegades, right? But also they're doing this thing where in Act 1, the farmers basically run themselves. It's almost like the Old West. It's like almost saying what if there wasn't really a bureaucracy? What if it didn't exist more or less?
I guess because it doesn't really explore what the world is, but because he talks about NASA as we don't want people to know us because people would freak out. We barely get any money as it is. We have to use old defense robots. He later says every rivet, it could have been a bullet. So it's this almost Sorkin-esque. And so to me, that implied that there is a larger bureaucracy, military keeping world order. They're just more, they don't care about the heartland of America. They're keeping peace in the cities and shit like that.
We don't know. Yeah.
And
we don't know.
And so it's all to say that it's that reverence, but hate for bureaucracy combined, because in this case, the reverence for the system and the code is the old world way of doing things. Whereas what we're seeing is the new world where it's we used to have NASA. And in this NASA is it's that idea. It's like when conservatives are Christians are the ones being discriminated. They love the idea of being the underdog. And so,
Right.
like, this is like NASA's the actual underdog, even though
'Cause they're
NASA's
the-
this giant.
Right, because it's seeped in tradition.
Right. So I think
and
it's
just
there.
the old ways will save us.
We just don't see it, that this whole thing is them being renegades, basically.
Right.
Is like, yeah, nobody knows they're doing it, you know? And then, of course, they're underestimated. In the end, they're celebrated. They have a museum. It's like, we were right. In the end, we were right.
We also have this. Oh, you keep going.
I was just going to say this I think goes into stay the course, because it's a debate about should the humanity stay the course, keep our heads down. But you could also argue that staying the course is the NASA, because it's also the world has changed, right? The world has not stayed the course. So by doing the star
world's
exploration, we are staying the course that way.
Another thing that I noticed is that you can kind of make this work. Work is always nearly as important as family in dad films. Sometimes dad films are about you work too much, but it is important to all dad movies, I think, that being good at one kind of means you're good at the other.
Well, we've talked about this. It's family v work. It's sacrificing family for work.
There's a conflict always. But Coop must go to NASA because that's him doing the best thing as a father he can do.
Yeah.
Even if it looks crazy, he's proven correct.
But this is throughout. So Heat is all about that, right? The work, the family versus their jobs. Al Pacino. Robin Hood has to go to the war. Wall Street, his dad, he's trying to get money to have a family for his dad. Yeah. The dad and the judge, the whole conflict is, you were never there for me. You cared about your work. The American president, he sacrifices his girlfriend's bill for work. 3:10 to Yuma. He is bringing his son along for the job. He's trying to balance the two. He's doing it all for his family. It's sacrificing. We Are Marshall, Matthew McConaughey, who is also in that, brings his family to this town to help a football team.
These are all about
the
setups.
Yeah,
but
it's all
you
about
notice
dad
that almost
has to
all
work.
these. You notice that all that is true. That's all the setup, and almost all of the films that we've named so far, I would go as far to say, which I think we have said before, that the end game though is the marriage between the two, and you can't be relentless when it comes to work. This movie,
yes and no, I'd say, because
this movie has the realization of that's why he wrote down "stay," right? He has the moment where he's like, I shouldn't have fucking done this.
Yeah, it's a dad older being like, I miss my kid's life, so I shouldn't have worked so much.
Yeah, so all these movies, 3:10 to Yuma as well, like all these movies play with this as a thing that is it's out of balance. It's somehow.
Work
and
is
it's usually corrected or it's a tragedy.
Yeah, they treat work like a force of nature. All these movies, they start with the idea of dad's got to work, and then it's up to the family to react. In some, like We Are Marshall, the family is fine with it, and others they fight back. This one especially, and so it's always like, if the family's cool with it, then fine, it's not conflict. But it's always there. Dad's got to work. That's a thing that has to happen. Mm-hmm. And then it's up to the dad and the family to work out the details of that.
Yeah, there is a pushback because they could be right about someone, but if the family is like, no, we need you now, that will be the threshold that the dad character will have to cross eventually. In fact, that's a lot of dysfunctional cinema. I could even see arguments for a lot of Wes Anderson movies tapping into dad stuff, although I think that because of their ensemble nature, it kind of breaks format for a lot of stuff. But a lot of our media kind of deals with this question. Right. It is interesting to me that the dad movies that we all choose and consider dad movies, and it seems like it's not a red flag, but a dad flag for a lot of us, is that there seems to be some kind of cosmic imbalance that any dad starts off with. Right. Almost, we are trained in society to believe that men almost always get it wrong in terms of what their work-life balance is supposed to be. They learn through tribulation how to balance it. And a good dad does that. Or they fail as a dad. It's a tragedy. It's Wall Street, so I think that that's interesting, is that we all, and as we go through the decades and as time advances for the culture, what that particular nuance is says a lot about us. You know, like if you go back to the Old West, there is an undeniable aspect about how those Westerns, until we got like the anti-Western and things like Unforgiven, it was like, no, you are the protector. You have no problem. Like if someone's challenging or threatening your family, you do whatever you have to. There's no second guessing it. There's no, and then you get 3:10 to Yuma, where his, Christian Bale's wife is like, you are a piece of shit. You suck. Go fight. Go fight. You're supposed to fight. And he's like, I don't want to fight. So we get a lot of, it muddies it up. It confuses it. But I think that as time has progressed, if I had to pick one theory out of it, it's almost like we've kind of gotten used to being wage slaves a little bit, where there's a little bit of like,
I mean, a little
bit of work is very important.
I wrote some more news about this, which is that if you go into the history of masculinity, it is tied directly to, there's literally think pieces of like higher up, like professors or even people with ties to like politicians. Once we were done doing so many wars, there was this concern that men wouldn't be men anymore without war. And the solution that they presented is labor.
Yeah.
And they were like, that's
interesting.
And both, if you notice, both war and labor conveniently help rich people. And that's really what it comes down to, is the guise of what makes a man has always conveniently been things to help powerful people get get things done, all the way to, if you watch the intro to the Man Show, they literally, the first intro to the Man Show is them talking about how many men died to make the Hoover Dam and how we have to bring back that manliness to America. Reverence for the death of laborers because it's manly. And it's like, yeah, we've always, like, and you see it throughout all these movies, it's like, dad's gotta work. You gotta work. You gotta contribute.
You gotta do it. It's the cardinal direction north is work time.
Yep.
Until your family is like, you were fucking up, and then
you have to work until you drive your family into the ground. Yeah,
which I think is also a new that's the difference between the Western and the anti-Western. It's like, as we modernize, I think there is, the dad films have relented a little bit.
McConaughey's character, by the way. No, he could be in a Western. Like, this character is a Western character. The way he talks. I mean,
this is key. Like, this is the period of the reconnaissance, as they call it, to 2014. So he's like he's doing what happened with Jason Sudeikis, in my opinion, with Ted Lasso, where it's like stumbled upon this character that's so fantastic, a way of operating, that he was just that person for the next like 8 things. Yeah. Because like True Detective is also that, he's Russ Cole a little bit. Because
he's a little haunting. Yeah,
he's a little haunted.
Yeah. So something I want to add into this now, and I want us to go back and examine, another rule is dad's gotta lie. I think these movies all kind of talk about the nature of good lies versus bad lies. Not all of them, but like it's like this might get lumped into like other like anti-bureaucracy stuff, where it's like Robin Hood stole and lied. He just did a lot of deceit.
Right. So there's some undermining of authority. So lying
disguises. Wall Street. It's all about lying, and he scams. Yeah, he scams Gecko at the end. It's a good lie versus a bad lie, right?
Or like a straight up bad lie to do a good thing.
Yes. And I bet if we go throughout, there's a lot of that where people do bad lies and then there's like good lies. And one of the most common ones is the self-sacrifice lie, the I'll be home, or like I'll be fine, or like Bruce Willis and Armageddon, spoilers, those moments where they like do a lie to sacrifice themselves. They're like, you said you were coming home, and they're like, well, I lied, I won't be home this time. Like, I think that's a common.
No, I mean, that dials right into the line from this movie that I pointed out. When you become a parent, one thing becomes clear: you want your kids to feel safe.
Yes, that because means parents lie to their kids. Yeah,
that whole scene is about, I didn't tell my kids that I'd be gone for this long. Why? And that I was saving the world. Why? Because then they think that the world is in peril, and I can't allow that. And it's like,
Right.
dude, look outside. They know the world's in peril.
Right. What ends up happening is his kids. It's like how every parent gets a bitter kid is by like a series of lies where the kid finally is like, I can't trust you. Everything you said was a fucking lie. And I was like, to protect you. And it's like, yeah, well, you made me hate you. Like, and that's kind of what happens here. He makes her hate him.
And that's why when my dad said it's illegal to turn on the light in the car at night, I never forgave him.
Exactly.
I was like, you're just saying that.
Liar.
You're
Father of lies.
Father of lies.
I regularly refer to my dad as the father of lies, specifically to my niece and nephew, because he's like grandpa. He'll just say things to them. And every now and then it's like, no, that's not true. Remember, he's the father of lies.
I wouldn't
He'll just say stuff.
I wouldn't put this
Dads
on.
love just saying stuff.
I mean, we love saying stuff. It's the way the world works. What you know? I don't really have anything to say there. So I do want to say one more thing, or something that did jump out at me.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we've completed the list. There's a lot of things we could go more into, you know, how there's lots of docking and stuff like that. But
yeah,
in terms of new ideas, because I think that this is something we kind of already hit on it just a second ago. Something that's truer about the more modern dad films, like modern. I mean, like dad films designed for millennials, like you know, and maybe Gen X. We get the sense that everything is explainable. Finding things out is always a virtue. So this movie hits it on the nose because we have a very scientific minded like ensemble. But when this movie basically says providence is explainable, something that providence has been a through line in a lot of dad movies because people are dealing with faith, or there's this like, there's always a big shot, or like that has to be taken, a leap of faith that has to be or a threshold has to be crossed for him to be proven correctly. In this movie, that happens with Love is the Fifth Dimension or whatever.
Yeah,
I think that falls into the control fantasy of dad movies.
I was about to say, do you think I'm trying to think of the other movies. Do dad films, can they not have ambiguous endings or ambiguous ideas? Do they have to? Because that idea, like, what is the aliens? At the end, they're like, it's us. It's us.
That's kind of where I'm getting to, is maybe not the ending. I mean, that ending, actually, you might be onto something there in terms of like, and there's a finalness to the like final scene or something like that we know what's going on. So there's no ambiguity. But I'm talking about like even in Act 3 where we like kind of the shoe drops and it says like, this is what the movie's about. This is where it's going. There's always something like faith or instinct. And dads usually want to reconcile this with, is there a way that the things that I'm good at are also the answers to the universe? And that almost always is true about dad films. It may not even be dad specific. That might just be a hero journey kind of deal, but it's almost framed as the call that they have to answer in dad movies. Yeah. So his choice to leave the family wasn't a blunder. It was worth it. Basically, there's no way you can slice it that McConaughey is a bad dad, because even the unexplainable to a scientist, where there's a bunch of unexplainable stuff. That's the whole point of being a scientist, is looking at the world saying like, let's try to figure that out. Right. Providence, literally love, literally like a fifth dimensional being we have no framework to understand at the beginning of the movie, becomes explained. Yeah. So that perfectly. Dads watching the movie basically have this feeling of control where they're like, yep, I bet he's going to solve that one too. You know, like, and that's crazy to me, is that we're
and
getting
the fact
actually
that it's
more.
Us. It's not even that it's like outside forces. The answer is like, no, it was all us.
And I think that there's something to be said about like the rugged frontiersmen of the origin of the dad movies. And once again, I go back to the old Westerns because they're simple. They're workmen. They're like we were talking about, laborers. They're people who there's a finite answer to this because it's a simple question. You done wrong. Now, when we go, there's ambiguity in the world. We still need the sense of control. We still need to know that these are our answer. But I think that dads are becoming more, in terms of a modern storytelling, becoming more prophetic in their characters. Like all of their characters are like, have a big shot to call. The shot is much larger. That may also just be an element of our adventure films are almost always are now bigger than ever in terms of stakes. But I do notice this in like the more recent trends.
You're bringing up a specific thing we should look at, which is like, we talk about what's in a dad movie. We should start talking about what's not in a dad movie.
Yeah, I think
because I
that's
do
probably
think
good.
like Deus Ex Machina, the premise of something saving or like, you know, like not you were. I think you were hitting something with the nonlinear storytelling, where I would go even farther than that, which is unconventional or weird narratives, where like I think that's different than like we love it when like a Tarantino film where everything falls apart.
Mhm.
But the idea of like jarring narrative ideas, or if the main character is suddenly infantilized and like has to realize there's something more powerful than themselves in a weird way. Like I wonder if there's little things like that which will rattle the dad films a little bit. But it really depends. I think it really has to depend. Like you look at the movie Contact, spoilers for Contact, they try to make it ambiguous, and if you remember, the last scene is them going, "No, it was actually real."
Yeah.
And so like even Contact, even a movie that's ambiguous
Has
can't
to have,
be.
there's lack of ambiguity. I think you're right about that. Yeah. And it's all, and especially when you frame it in a framework that already has the sense of like, oh, the world doesn't believe you, well, fuck the world. That now becomes like, I don't know, a dangerous trope. It becomes like I was saying, they're more prophetic now. They're more like idealized because they're in their soloness.
Right.
They stand alone is the deal, which is interesting because we also like teamwork building and Master and Commander.
I was about to say Master and Commander. We find out who the captain is of that ship. That's a really good example where like I'm gonna just use the word, a better film. You'd never find the other.
You'd just
ship.
be like he was the ghost that made the problem for all of them.
Yeah, and Russell Crowe would go insane, and it would be Russell Crowe would be the problem. But not when they're like, no, he's right. Here's the captain. Here's the ship.
And let's take him.
He got him. Yeah, because they don't want to end on something ambiguous or something that makes you think too hard. They're like, nah, he was right.
And if we're really telescoping as far back as we can go, I can take it one level further and say that it's not just the ambiguity, but there needs to be a sense of poetic justice in the world. Another one that we actually get that is a smaller part of our list, but we had mentioned it in earlier ones, is snitches get stitches.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what we get with Matt Damon, because his worldview doesn't align. It comes to this aspect. It becomes revealed that it's like, no, you get that ending. You get that ending. Even though people don't get justice all the time, a lot of people do get the dad's justice.
I just realized a movie we should watch because it is a dad horror film. It is the anti-dad film. That movie is Old Boy. Old Boy also has Snitches Get Stitches. Well, it has Snitches Get Stitches. It has a dad's worst nightmare. I won't spoil it, but it's, it's the thing that's an Old Boy. And I think that movie, if we watched it, would be presented as an anti-dad film, the way What Lies Beneath kind of was, but even more so.
Right.
I think Old Boy is not an action. It's a dad horror film.
Yeah,
and we might want to talk about
scare
that
dads in
because
particular.
I think that one will show us a lot of dad ideas and also things that aren't normally in dad films.
Lack of answers, the assault on his masculinity. Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff.
I think that's a big dad horror film.
So, how about that, audience? Maybe dads aren't that simple. Huh? Actually, I think that this podcast we're trying to say that we are very simple. We're Tim Allen's in the end. We gotta lie.
We're exploring. We don't need answers.
That's true.
Not like the dad films themselves. We can be ambiguous.
We're elevated dads.
Yeah.
Ooh, that would be a good genre. We should start it.
The elevated dad movies? Ooh, yeah. There might be one out there. I don't know.
We're already in our smoking.
We haven't done Art House Dad, and I'm curious to know if we could do Art House Dad.
Like a Little Miss Sunshine or something.
Yeah. We also need to do Dad Kids movie, which we do have one. We talked about this. It's The Incredibles.
The Incredibles is definitely...
it's about how no one's special, or like it's like about nanny, like, ooh, everybody's special stuff, and it's from the point of view of a dad. It's a dad film.
Everyone's special.
It's a weirdly conservative Pixar film.
Right.
Yeah, we should
We should maybe cover that.
do that,
And then
one.
then we'll throw you some fucking bones. We like to do the weird ones because it's interesting to us.
Yeah,
But we can also cover fucking Tombstone or Rudy or
Of
Jack
course.
Ryan's. Like, we're
Of
probably
course.
going to do Some of All Fears or some shit.
yeah, of course.
We're probably going to do a Hearts War.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What
Of
else?
course we are. Porn.
Sting.
Are there any dad porns?
I think most of them.
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
If the stepfather phenomenon is still, I guess it's stepbro. God, I'm bad at porn.
You're
I
rusty.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm rusty.
I mean, who
gotta
knows
go.
what Gen Z is jerking off to now? It's probably
Oh.
real fucking intense. It's probably metaverse. It's like
Oh, yeah.
it's like a crazy. It's like escape rooms. They're like jerking off in escape rooms.
They're just jerking off and vaping, dude.
Yeah, vape that. Vape that.
Get that popcorn lung, dude. They're all going to die before us, aren't they?
Oh God, I hope so. That'll make me feel so much better.
Yeah, so that's the deal with, I think we're done. I think we can eject, we can take off our coats, turn into normal human beings who are not identifying as dads
Yeah.
currently. And that's that episode. Hey, so where can, I mean, most people know this is a show on Small Beans, but you should listen more to Dave, and Dave, you should say more about that.
Gamefully unemployed. Google it. GAMEFULLY unemployed. That's it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
get
just
more
Google
Dave
it.
in your life.
Yeah.
And there's some shows over there that I'm in, some ones that Michael's in.
Yeah.
You also get the added benefit of Tom, who you'll recognize from our Spiel Boys series here on Small Beans.
Yeah.
But you probably all know that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't really have anything else, so
Now let's fuck
I
this
guess-
dad.
Yeah, let's play us out, weird jazz guy.
Jazz daddy.